Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which María Belén Beltramo Gómez will defend the academic thesis, Food Labeling Policies for Fresh Produce Promotion, Integrating Scientific Evidence, Regulation and Consumer Preferences. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis?
Thank you. Dear family, friends, and colleagues, welcome to the presentation about the conclusions and results of my thesis entitled Food Labeling Policies for Fresh Produce Promotion, Integrating Scientific Evidence, Regulation, and Consumer Preferences. Over the last year, the incidence of chronic diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, obesity has been increasing. These diseases are associated with unhealthy diets that are high in saturated fatty acids, sugar, salt, kilocalories. And these diets are also associated with increase in the numbers of preventable deaths. Around 15% of deaths are caused by these diets. Among these dietary factors, we also find the low intake of fruits and vegetables that account for around 1.5 and 2% of preventable deaths. Luckily, dietary factors are modifiable, and voluntary labeling policies can be applied to fresh produce to promote their consumption. Among these labeling policies, we find claims. Nutrition claims are any declaration about a product's nutritional qualities, such as source of or high-in claims, while health claims highlight a proven relationship between a compound and a bodily function. All these policies are part of what we currently know as the food system. The food system encompasses all the relevant actors, resources, and interlinked value-adding activities involved in the production, distribution, enablement, consumption, and disposal of food and beverages. Understanding these components from a policy perspective allow us to identify the different research gaps, but also opportunities where we can apply interventions effectively to improve the outcomes across the system. Today, on December the 8th, in Argentina, we put up the Christmas tree. So I thought of using the reference of the Christmas tree to explain food labeling policies, food systems related to food labeling policies. First off, we have the trunk of our tree, here representing the natural resources, such as the land, water resources, but also the varieties, the different plant varieties that are typical to a certain area or that can be introduced from other regions. Next, we have the branches of our tree. The lower, wider branches are representing the producers and also the supply chains that are in place, offering core support to the system. Next, we have the middlemen, the middle actors, such as the markets. We have those markets that are closer to the consumer, but also those markets that are more closely related to wholesale. And on top, we have the regulators and the local and regional political structures. Next, represented by the lights of our tree, we have the different innovations that can be applicable at different levels. Next, we have also the policies, represented here by the Christmas tinsels, that can be applied to our food system and give fluidity and connection between the different actors and activities. Next, represented by the Christmas ornaments, we see the salient food labeling policies, such as nutritional health claims, front-of-pack labeling, among other initiatives. And finally, we have the consumer. The interface where the consumer interacts with the different actors and activities is known as the food environment. He or she made decisions about the purchase, the preparation, and the consumption of foods and beverages. Because fresh fruits and vegetables can bear nutritional and health claims, and labeling policies and regulations were not designed targeting these foods. So in this dissertation, I explored the nutritional composition data that can be used to support labeling information, such as nutritional health claims and origin declarations, as well as how people perceive these policies when they are in place and they are applied to fruits and vegetables. And I also look at which other complementary initiatives based on front-of-pack labels can be used to further promote healthier and sustainable behavior in consumers. In this thesis, I focus on fresh fruits and vegetables as the main objective of study. So in chapter 6, I explore the many meanings the word fresh can take, particularly when we talk about fruits and vegetables. We identify 10 concepts that we grouped into 3 dimensions. We have the nutritional and healthy dimension, those concepts related to legal and economic dimension, and finally the social dimension, mostly related to quality aspects. Through this reflective analysis, we can see is how contested and how complicated this term can be at times. Therefore, it shows that we need clarity in defining freshness for policies promoting fruits and vegetables. Fresh fruits and vegetables can bear nutritional health claims, provided they comply with the nutritional composition requirements. While nutritional health claims can be made on foods, a nutritional declaration is non-mandatory. So food business operators need to use trustworthy, up-to-date, and accurate compositional data to support claims on their produce. In Chapter 2, I look at how much nutritional composition data of fruits and vegetables in the European Union vary between countries. I use national food composition databases to make this analysis, all with the aim of seeing whether nutrient differences would also translate into one country being able to apply a claim and another country not being able to apply the claim, even if these countries are closely related geographically from each other. What we found was that vitamins offer the greatest variability of all nutrients, and that vegetables were more heterogeneous than fruits. We also saw that these differences would translate into practical differences, so one country being able to apply a claim and another country not. We mostly saw this for vitamin A, folate, and vitamin C claims. Next, something that we observed across different food composition databases was that there was not much data at the variety level. So most of the report was done at an item-based level, so a generic level, while reporting data by different varieties would allow us to have a better understanding of the richness of the data, because many times differences between varieties is where richness of the data is and where we could apply nutritional health claims. Finally, what I found was that accessible and cost-effective nutrient data sources could really help small and medium producers, allowing them to better support nutritional health claims on their products. Next, on Chapter 3, I explore how practical food compositional data can support the use of nutritional health claims, especially when it's connected to the idea of bioavailability. Bioavailability is basically how well our bodies absorb and use nutrients, and not so much related to how much is present of a certain nutrient in food. I focus on 3 main vitamins commonly found in vegetables, and we looked at how they are metabolized in our bodies, how they're measured, and how they're represented in legislation. What we found here was that the cooking methods and the processing methods many times affect the bioavailability of vitamins, making them not bioavailable and accessible to us. Then related to the measuring methods, we found that many times the methods that are applied target vitamins, compounds that are not bioavailable to us, generating some kind of a mismatch between what we can absorb and make use and what is actually measured many times. And thirdly, regulations many times report 1 or 2 chemical forms, while many more exist in nature. Altogether, this chapter shows us that if we want accurate and evidence-based nutritional health claims, we need a better understanding of how the different vitamin forms behave from a farm-to-fork perspective and within a body's perspective. Now moving towards consumers' behaviors and perception, research showed that consumers really value products that bear a claim. They would be willing to pay an extra for product with a claim. So in Chapter 4, I look at how consumers value nutrition and health claims and origin declarations on a case of fresh white asparagus. We presented consumers with a combination of claims, starting off with origin declarations, nutrition claims based on vitamin C and folate, and an immune-related health claim based on, as well, vitamin C and folate. And we also included 4 price points at incremented points, using the market price as the base. This is an example of a choice set that we showed to consumers. Consumers were randomized into 2 blocks, and each block saw or answered 8 choice sets. We also prioritized testing all the interesting combinations, but at the same time that each choice set was not extremely difficult for consumers to make a choice. Overall, we saw that health claims were mostly preferred and increased the probability of consumers of paying a bit extra. But at the same time, we also saw that there was some remaining heterogeneity, showing us that might be some segments of consumers with similar characteristics or answers. So we explored this with a latent class analysis. we found three main segments. A first segment that, although they prefer any type of claim, they wouldn't go up that much in how they would pay for that product, and we call this the price-sensitive group. Then we found a segment that really prefer health claims, and finally we found a group that were really torn towards origin declarations. We also evaluated the characteristics that were similar within each segment that would tend or tell us about the certain conditions that would be preferences for consumers. So we found that in the price-sensitive group, they reported reading the price tag more often, while in the other two segments reported reading the food information more often. So actually kind of looking more actively for this type of information. Going into the health-oriented group, they also reported having a higher confidence in understanding labels. They're reporting having a higher ability to process claim, and at the same time, they're reporting having a higher need for information. So again, this tendency of having a higher need for actively looking for that information. On the public health perspective, as consumers were more familiar with common nutrients such as vitamin C, nutrition education needs further development. Nutrition literacy campaigns can help consumers understanding labeling information and make informed choices. Now going towards other type of initiatives based also on labeling initiatives, we see that the Nutri-Score and the Eco-Score are designed to help consumers choose healthier and more sustainable foods. As we can also couple these initiatives with social marketing initiatives, or they're also called complementary initiatives, that extend the purchasing moment. So in Chapter 5, I look beyond this label itself, asking how do consumers respond when these social, private social marketing initiatives are in place. We tested initiatives based on the Nutri-Score and the Eco-Score, products having a better Nutri-Score or Eco-Score, such as an A or a B in either score, and we tested three types of initiatives. Those were price-based incentives, so with a better score, the consumer received a discount. Gamified engagement, so people could collect points when they purchase a product with a better score, and then they could redeem those points to join a workshop. Or informational nudges, for example, suggestions about alternative products with a better score system. And people answer their awareness of these initiatives, their participation, so if they made purchases accordingly to these initiatives, and their perception in helping them making better choices. Overall, we found three segments. We found a bigger segment that was unaware of initiatives, and also they mostly prefer price focus, so the discount-based incentives. Then we find a second group that really value engaging activities such as the collecting points and redeeming them for joining workshops, and they reported being more active. And a third group that they value both informational-based and gamified incentives, but they reporting knowing the initiatives but not having done purchases accordingly. So they know that that is there, but they don't act upon. What we see from this analysis is that labels might not be enough. So it's nice to have informational-based incentives such as the Nutri-Score and the Eco-Score, but we need to couple them with economic and behavioral levers to create impactful, behaviorally informed policies. Now going into the discussion of this thesis, there are two central concepts of European food law in this thesis. We have food information and the consumer. Policies need to align and enable food environments for consumers. What we see across this research is that policy progress has not kept in pace with the urgency of today's challenges. Despite the strong ambitions such as the Farm to Fork and the European commitment to set nutrient profiling models, there's still a lack of alignment, transparency, and enforcement across the European Union. The findings from this work offer a strong and consistent message. We need to invest in governance. We need to strengthen the governance and transparency of policies. We need to invest in nutrition education so that citizens can make use of information they receive. And we need to empower local, sustainable food systems so that healthy options are accessible to all. Because only by connecting evidence, policy, and citizens, we can advance towards a healthier, fairer, and more sustainable European food system. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Before we begin with the opposition, I would like to mention the supervision team. They don't ask any questions today, but they have, of course, been very important in the process of the PhD of Belén. That's Dr. Ali de Boer, Dr. Harlan Dillian, and Dr. Miriam Eurlings. And also special thanks to Professor Al Bas, who's likely online as well. We start with the questions, and I would like to ask Professor Remco Havermans, Professor Youth, Food and Health of Maastricht University, to open the opposition.
Yes. Dear candidate, I've read your thesis with great interest, and it shows a wide diversity in terms of intriguing research questions and methodologies. I'd like to congratulate you and your supervisory team for such a nice and very relevant piece of work. I'm also in awe of the design of the cover of your thesis. It's so very creative, really lovely. But I would like to ask you a question on chapter 4. And leading to that question, I would like to ask the audience here, well, everyone here, to answer a straightforward question first. So, imagine an apple orchard. So, big field filled with lines of apple trees, beautiful apple trees. And this apple orchard is irrigated by a nearby stream. Very efficient, right? However, recently it was discovered that this particular stream is filled to a high degree with the chemical hydroxyl acid. And we know that this hydroxyl acid, this particular chemical, can be fatal when inhaled. So, if I now were to ask you, would you feel comfortable eating an apple from this particular orchard? Please raise your hand if yes. Annette raised her hand. Okay, thank you very much, Annette. This is interesting. Now, if you raise your hand just now, and Annette, we all saw that Annette raised her hand, a bit hesitantly, but she did. Thank you very much for that. Annette, you clearly knew what I was talking about when I was referring to hydroxyl acid, because it is a fairly quaint name for water, which is fatal if you try to inhale it. So please don't try to inhale water. But of course, other than that, it's completely innocuous. You're perfectly fine eating the apple. Well done, Annette. Thank you very much. But if you didn't know that hydroxyl acid actually is water, then all you heard is the name of a scary-sounding chemical. And of course, you don't want scary chemicals on or in your food. That makes sense. But the point here is that true information can quickly lead to false conclusions in the minds of the ignorant. And clearly, candidate, that is what happened in your asparagus study of chapter 4, right? Because quite a few consumers were completely unfamiliar with folate and read the source of folate claim as a warning, as a health warning. In light of that finding, you conclude that consumers could use some more nutrition education, but I do not agree. Why would you conclude that? Because these nutrition claims are completely voluntary, as you explicitly state in that chapter. So why didn't you conclude that we should advise against using any of these nutrition claims by food producers?
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and your question, and for the very interactive question. I think I need to disagree with the point you mentioned here, in the sense that it's not that people saw what we saw in our studies, so folate claims were not that much preferred, right, compared to vitamin C claims. But there were, for some segments, it were still preferred. For instance, with the segment that we call them the health-oriented group. They prefer like vitamin C and folate health claims compared to the other claims. So in that case, still, they might be not that much familiar with folate, but at the same time, they still were torn towards paying more for products that have that claim.
In combination with the health claim, right?
Yes, for the claim, yeah.
Yeah, but then you explain that it's actually a good thing that there's folate in there with the health claim.
Yes.
In the absence of the health claim, there's no such explanation, and you read a scary chemical, folate. Ugh, I don't want my folate in my asparagus. That doesn't sound any good.
Well, in the case of the health claim, it goes coupled with what it does for the health, so the health benefit. So in that case, I think that wouldn't be too much of a problem in that case.
I agree. Yeah.
At the same time, we were actually deciding whether to use folate or vitamin B9 in the sense of in the naming of the product. And we did a pilot test, and people were more familiar with folate than with vitamin B9. So that's why we used that word there, that wording there.
Yep.
So we did a pre-test for that. And then related to nutrition literacy, that in your question, I think it's needed in the case of, we saw that people with higher nutrition literacy, with high self-reported nutrition literacy or previous knowledge of the nutrients, they were more positive towards claims. So prior knowledge also makes them make more informed choices or be more open to reading information and understanding information. That's not only the conclusion from our study, but also conclusion from other studies in consumer sciences. There's a strong connection between knowledge and motivation, and then the final choice.
I fully agree with that. But
Yes.
the point, of course, is that a lot of consumers do not have the knowledge about all the potential nutrients, micronutrients that might be beneficial and might be in or not in particular food. So for a food manufacturer who only wants to use these nutrition claims to promote choice of the product that he's making or selling, it's a bit of a risk, right? Putting nutrition claims on the product. So why not advise all food producers, don't do it. Yes, if you have grounds for a specific health claim, yeah, we found that works. Put it on there. Stick it on your product. But if you only have grounds for nutrition claims, better not do it, right?
Well, that's also what we saw, right? So we tested nutrition claims and health claims. We saw that health claims offer more benefits or positive results than only nutrition claims. So that's also one of the conclusions. We would advise if there's enough. So the conditions for a health claim, it's the same as for nutrition claim. It needs to be at least have 15% of the daily recommended values, which white asparagus comply with that. So if they were to put out a nutrition claim, we would advise them to go for a health claim because it offers an added value compared to only saying it's high in vitamin C, folate, fiber, or whatever other type of claim. So in that case, I think it also goes hand in hand with the lack of knowledge from consumers that we need to kind of offer a bit of other extra information because only saying that it's high in the certain nutrient for them, it might not be enough because they say, okay, yeah, what do I do with this information? I don't understand what is folate good for. So in that case, I agree with that, with that point, indeed. So that's and that's also the conclusion from this paper. We would advise producers first to do a pilot study to really know who they're targeting, and also which type of nutrients are better to communicate in that type of products.
But we don't need extra nutrition education. I don't need to go back to school.
I think that's also, we had a very nice discussion earlier this morning about nutrition education and food education, knowing where the food is coming from, how to prepare food, having more knowledge and more resources about that, because then we are more informed to then make choices when we are in the supermarket or at the market. So I think that's still extremely important, but it's not the only thing that we need to solve in the current situation we are at.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The opposition will be continued by Professor Caroline Gaukens, Professor Consumer Behavior of the School of Business and Economics, Maastricht University.
Dear candidate, also from my side, congratulations on this nice piece of work to you and to your supervisors. I did not prepare a quiz. I did prepare a set of questions, a long set of questions, so I rely a bit on the chair to stop me when my time is over. I would like to start with a more general question that relates to the broader context of your research. So your work examines the effectiveness of labeling for fresh produce, which aligns with current trends that we currently see in retailing, where we see a wealth of claims highlighting how certain products can make us healthier. As an expert in this domain, how do you think this trend is changing the way consumers relate to food? Do you believe it is shifting us away from what we call the French approach of eating, which is where food is valued for pleasure and enjoyment, towards a more utilitarian view where eating is primarily about fueling the body appropriately? Is this a beneficial shift? And is this something that we should try to push? I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and your question. So I think I would maybe focus in the Dutch consumers because we mostly did research here, also in Belgium, but mostly here in the Netherlands. And I think if I see the way Dutch people eat or how you see eating, it's more of a, not full utilitarian, but it's more closely to utilitarian than the French way or the Italian way of eating. I come from Argentina. For me, eating means getting together with my family, having a meal to share, like having an extended table moment. So it's not only the nutritious value of food, but also kind of the sentimental value of food. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But related to fresh fruits and vegetables, intake is not there yet. So we should push for that. Mm-hmm. That's what we did in this study. We look at other sources, other ways of pushing for increasing the consumption of fruits and vegetables, because apparently they are not sexy products. So we tried to kind of include these labels, if people were interested in them, how they would react to them, because it's something that it's done with some packed fruits and vegetables. So we also tested that in unpacked asparagus to see how people would react, but it's not done a lot. So I think that we designed these studies, and also my way of seeing nutrition is not utilitarian. I know we conducted a study more closely related to the economy, an econometry study, but my conclusions are mostly closely related to policy and to nutrition. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That being said, I think, like, of course, you can advise producers, their point of view is more like utilitarian because, of course, they make a living out of that. And you can advise, for instance, supermarket as well, because, for instance, here in the Netherlands, Albert Heijn is putting out Nutri-Score. It's not a nutritional health claim, but it's a front-of-pack label on almost every product. Fruits and vegetables also bear a Nutri-Score. So you see that there are other interests or other partners also kind of following or taking that initiative.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it's a choice that you make. You can also opt for claims that focus on a more hedonic point of view, on how tasty it is. Mm-hmm. So in the end, it's a choice that you make. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. My second question has to do with your findings in chapter 4. As you know, I have an expertise in consumer behavior, which is why I focus on this chapter. Now, you mentioned that consumer preferences for claims on typical European produce, such as white asparagus, have not yet been studied. Could you explain why existing findings on vegetables like water spinach are not generalizable for your specific research question? So in what way is white asparagus conceptually or contextually different from prior research? And then as a follow-up question, if the effects of labeling depend so strongly on the specific vegetable studied, does this limit the theoretical and policy relevance of your findings beyond the case of what you study? And additionally, what complementary studies might allow you to broaden the relevance of your findings? Yeah. These are actually 3 questions, and I realize.
In case I'm lost, I will ask. So for the first part, I'm familiar with the water spinach experiment because we work with one of the scientists from that group. Yeah. And we decided to test typical produce from Limburg. So that's why we are focusing on white asparagus. And we were interested in a product that was high in a certain nutrient, especially folate, but at the same time, quite local and like had that other quality attribute. So that's why we tested that. And at the same time, it's a seasonal product and it has a higher price. So it's kind of a quality product to call it in a way. That's why we tested it in that case. So we could kind of apply like different price points, and it was not as sensitive as trying maybe other product that would be more of a staple, like potatoes, I don't know. On one side that, then related to the policy perspective, to the policy question you had. Can you repeat that bit? Because I'm...
Yeah, because you focus so much on this specific product, and you actually explicitly say that you expect a bit different results than from the research on the water spinach. So to what extent can we learn then from your research for other vegetables? I imagine I'm a potato producer. Do I then, is this relevant for me, or do you say, no, this is something specific for this vegetable?
So I think the conclusion is specifically related to folate and vitamin C. They're related to white asparagus. Also the origin declaration, I don't think maybe we need to test it, right? But then if you have an origin declaration for potatoes here in the Netherlands, I don't think it would be, it would matter that much, as it is a staple product that is grown throughout the country. So I think it can be extrapolated in the case of measuring and targeting your audience and the consumers of your product.
Okay.
If you want to apply claims to other type of products in that case.
Okay.
Another thing that we can learn, also related to what Dr. Remco was asking, is the education side. So we saw that there was quite low familiarity with folate. So that showed us that we need to invest, from the policy perspective, more in education.
Okay.
And related to your last question about complementary measures, something that we did not test, but it's very important for any type of study conducted on consumers, is the price, right? So we've seen that most of the policies going out nowadays, such as the Eat Lancet, all the latest paper on ultra-processed food, they're talking about pricing policies, such as reducing VAT on fresh produce, that we know that that's also something that was tried. They tried to do it here in the Netherlands. That didn't go through. So I think like on the pricing side, because that's one of the main barriers to eating healthier or better, that would be, I think, one of the policy things that should be applied.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. The opposition will be continued by Professor Sylvia Jakowska-Biemans, Professor of Food Market and Consumer Research, Warsaw University of Life Science.
So, Belén, first of all, I would congratulate you on completing this thesis. I found it very challenging. At the first sight, I thought it's contradictory. Food labeling policies for fresh produce. From the marketing perspective, it's a great challenge. From the nutrition science perspective, we should do everything what we can to stimulate the consumption of fresh produce for the benefits of the societies. And so the first warm-up question, I was also puzzled, as the other members of the committee, by the cover of your thesis and the violet or pink cauliflower. Is there any hidden message about biodiversity behind?
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question and your kind words. So I took the pictures during summer, and the purple cauliflower was in season and was locally produced. So I thought, okay, this is a nice message to communicate in the front part of my book. So that's why I chose it. I would have liked to have asparagus, but it was in season. So that's, mainly that.
Yeah, so of course this pink or violet cauliflower, this is something what the consumers don't really encounter in the food environment so often. So my first question, more general question, would be, as you concluded, labels alone are insufficient for a systemic behavioral change. So what kind of coordinated actions, I mean the push factors, extending beyond the voluntary labeling, are more crucial for creating the supportive food environment to stimulate the consumption of fresh produce?
Thank you. So I think I was talking a bit about pricing before. It's one of the main barriers to eating healthier, so pricing policies there. At the same time, we don't have a European nutrient profiling model, and that's a pity because it kind of stops us from applying a systemic approach to for healthy and sustainable policies, or targeting healthy or sustainably eating. In that, what I mean is that we don't have this nutrient profiling model that can allow us to target marketing towards children, the placing of foods in the supermarket, the offer of foods in food canteens at schools, at universities, different, like the food environment around universities, at the same time, the use of claims on unhealthy foods. That's, I think, one of the main barriers. If you go back to the nutritional and health claim regulation, that was one of the main objectives. So we need to have this systemic view, this systemic approach to a systemic problem, right? So it's a multifaceted problem, and we are not currently targeting it in that way.
And Belén, if you think from the nutritional science perspective, do you think that we should be equally interested to push forward these measures for both categories, fruit and vegetables?
So if we go back to how much they are consumed, they're both at low quantities. So the recommended values are around 300 grams a day for vegetables, 200 grams a day for fruits, and we're at around 130 and 160 respectively. So we are like midway through, especially for vegetables. So I think that the type of policies that we can use, yes, but the moment when we consume fruits and vegetables are different. So usually fruits, you consume them for snacking moments, sometimes as a dessert, like after dinner or lunch, and vegetables, it's usually in the main meals. If we go to the case here in the Netherlands, like the typical lunch, Dutch lunch is a sandwich, so it's bread and cheese. Some people also have some snacking vegetables, but that's something that you don't see across different groups. So that's maybe a missing opportunity to include vegetables there. So then we need to have them offered to people.
Mm-hmm. And thinking about this food environment, if you think about the policies of retailers, what do you think should change to have this beautiful pink cauliflower available in season?
Yes. So for this type of products, they are usually seasonal and they are not produced in mass quantity, so they're usually quite expensive. Usually you see them in farmers markets. I bought it online from the Crisp online supermarket, which is kind of a niche supermarket. So it's not you don't go to the typical supermarket here in the Netherlands and find it there during season. So I think we need to, it would be a scale, the production, to be able to offer them in all supermarkets, and that side, that would be one of the things. So then we should also maybe promote, as I was telling during my presentation, local food systems, like support sustainable food system producers in a certain way to extend or like enlarge the production. But I think those are also decisions. If it goes with demand. So if people are not demanding this, you won't find these products in bigger supermarkets. I think that's the main reason there.
Yeah, it's like with this folate. They don't know they can even demand it. Yes. Okay. So then, just one more question, if I may. And it's again a kind of more general question. What are the consequences of framing fresh produce as a commodity, comparing to considering it as a common good for developing food labeling policies for fresh produce?
That's a nice point, I think. I like this topic a lot. I think moving from commodity to common good kind of places food at the center and the importance and the quality of food, right? And not only, okay, we need to produce more to sell more. It's more like, okay, we need to have quality products offered to people. But it's also mostly important, where are we sourcing from? Especially, well, now currently in the European Union, there's a strong support for European food systems, European production, as it was said in the latest Vision for Agriculture and for food and agriculture. There's like this call for enforcing local systems here that goes kind of against also supporting other economies. But at the same time, many times produce coming from other economies are of low quality and not very sustainable production. We have, for instance, you have the case of oranges from Morocco that many times are not produced in very nice conditions, and then you have oranges from Spain that are typically from the region of Valencia, and they're not very much promoted because at the price point they're way cheaper, like them from Morocco are way cheaper. So we need to find a balance there to position food at the center and the concept of food being of quality at the center, moving from the commodity perspective of cheaper, yeah, better, we have more, we can sell more or have a higher revenue. And then related to labeling policies, I think it goes much related to if we have a more controlled production, we're better able to follow the steps in the production and sample, and going back to chapter 2, having 2 and 3, having a better idea of the composition of our products to support nutritional and health claims.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Bart Penders, Associate Professor of Biomedicine and Society of Maastricht University.
Thank you. I would like to join everybody else and congratulate you with completing this fine work. And I also want to join everybody else and say that I love the cover very much, and I understand the need to represent multiple shades of a single vegetable on the cover of your thesis. I did the same on mine, broccoli in 3 shades. I have to admit, though, that you did it better. So instead of asking you to deepen one of the perspectives that you offer in your interdisciplinary thesis, I would like to ask you, or use this opportunity, to exchange views on the ties that bind together all the different aspects of your work. The overarching framework that makes the whole thing coherent and genuinely interdisciplinary. And such a synthesis or integrative approach can be operationalized through flowcharts and complex figures, but it usually rests on the realization that the entity at the heart of the study is a multiple one. And when I ask my own students, when they approach this sort of conceptualization of the topic, I always ask them to read the paper, What is a Good Tomato? By the philosopher and anthropologist Annemarie Mol. You may know her and you may have read that paper. But for everybody else, goodness, she argues, is many things, but it's never all of those things at the same time. A good tomato to a chef is flavorful. A good tomato to a transporter is firm. A good tomato to a sauce factory is soft. So the pursuit of the good tomato has actually diversified the tomato. We now have tomatoes that are firm, that are soft, that are green, red, big, elongated and small, and everything. All to accommodate the multitude of what the tomato is, the multitude of our evaluation of a good tomato, and how we attribute worth to a tomato. Not all multitudes need integration or synthesis. Sometimes they're just fine the way they are. And you devote a whole chapter in your thesis to the notion of the multitude of freshness. You actually skipped it in your intro talk to the audience, so perhaps I would like to invite you, after I finish the question, to say a few words to the audience so that everybody knows what the two of us are actually talking about. And I think that it might be, sort of conceptually speaking, the most important chapter in your thesis. Freshness, you argue, is many things to many people. You map out some of these, and possibly there are more. I can imagine a cultural interpretation not currently covered, but only known to people my age, in the form of freshness as understood by the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. First, I would like to ask you, how do these multiple meanings, interpretations, or valuations of freshness and their interactions actually change freshness? So do we live in a world where the pursuit of freshness or fresh produce and has produced so many forms of freshness, and how would we, as consumers or as scholars, even notice? And then second, does that multitude of freshness allow for integrated governance of freshness? Or should we devote our efforts to govern freshness to a subset of all these many sorts of freshness? And then which ones? And how would that look like in terms of a governance frame?
Dear esteemed opponent, thank you for your questions and your nice words and your reflection on the chapter. Maybe as a clarification, my last paper it's a reflective paper on the many meanings, according to my trajectory, that the word fresh, and especially related to fresh fruits and vegetables, can take. I discussed it a bit in my presentation, so we talk about like those related to the quality, to what people expect from fresh produce, those related to legal and economic dimensions, so that, for instance, we can define fresh for applying a tax reduction, or we can use that for defining it as a common good and not a commodity. And then also it could also be, for instance, a determinant for social belonging. So some people accessing fresh fruits and vegetables makes them, usually they're at a better economic group. Or those related to the nutritious and healthy definition and policies, such as national food-based dietary guidelines, this concept of against processing, so it's fresh because it's not processed, and so on. So regarding your questions about the many forms that freshness can take, so for me, it was a reflective paper, right? So throughout my thesis, I was kind of chewing and thinking about the concept of what does fresh mean. For me, at the beginning, it was quite easy. So it's the fruit that you find when you go to the market or the supermarket. But then somehow, somewhat in my second year, I think like this not agree upon decision by the Tweede Kamer came, and that they could not come with a definition for fresh for reducing tax. That when we started discussing with my promotion team, like, okay, so maybe what we think is fresh is not that easy for people. And then we started kind of delving into the different dimensions and meanings it can have. Also now related to the discussion against ultra-processed food, it's kind of, what you should eat. Like you make everything at home, you should eat everything homemade and so on. Kind of also that was another reflection there. So I think that fresh produce, like they're out there, they're a thing, but we can define them and understand them from different perspectives, depending kind of the aim and the utility we give to them. Or the aim they're after. So if they're part of food-based dietary guidelines, we can define them in a certain way. Are also related to fresh, especially for vegetables, many times, depending on the maturity level, it could be a vegetable or it could be more related to a grain or a pulse. So that's related to that. So I think it's not all definitions are happening at the same time. They're very much dependent on the policy, if we are after policy or if we are after a recommendation, what we should recommend people to do. And we think we need to clearly define, or policymakers need to clearly define what they're talking about when they're designing policy. Because if we have a clear definition, it's clearly what we're targeting and what we are after. That would clarify the objectives there in that sense. At the same time, I think that you can target different things at the same time. It's not that you have only one freshness, oh, I've only focused on this and only focused on that. You can, of course, have, like, for instance, what the latest Eat Lancet tells us about, that we need to also consider people and kind of the social aspect of eating there and what, like, the impact of producing food has on different peoples. So that's also something that you need to consider there. So it's not only consider the nutritious part, but also the other impacts you have. I think that kind of answers your question you asked me. So I think, like, defining, like, the core concept here is you need to define something to kind of act upon and regulate or define policy with that. And then if we have, like, an integrated governance, your question there, I think, like, we can dream a lot about that as scientists, right? But then if governments and policymakers are not acting upon and are not deciding on that, that's very difficult. Some days ago, I follow a talk about, like, having this multilateral governance and having, like, different ministries in the same room, or also having the industry. I think it's important to have, like, open talk when they are defining policy, but it should be defined, right? So we should have a set of actions. We should start doing something. And I think, like, for instance, defining fresh could be a good start, because then you can define policies based on what you consider freshness is.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Annette Rodenburg, Professor of Applied Sciences, Nutrition and Health from Haas Green Academy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, for me, dear candidate, I would like to congratulate you with this thesis, and the team, of course, too. I've read it with great interest and was triggered by the multidisciplinary approach, which at the same time leads to many points of discussion. So I'm happy to have this opportunity now. And the first thing I would like to do is continue our discussion on fresh, and would like you to ask one of your paranyms to read proposition, let's see, number 5.
The concept of fresh has many interpretations and uses depending on the context. Prioritizing one definition can shape policies that genuinely improve access to high quality and nutritious foods.
Thank you. And now my question. Imagine that you are the one to advise our government to come up with a definition of fresh. What definition would you choose and why?
Your esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words on your question. So I think when we think about fruits and vegetables especially, right? So one of the main barriers to eating more or healthier diets is also we need things convenient. So I would define fresh as those fruits and vegetables that have no added salt, sugar, or other nutrients that are not typical to them. So you could also have them frozen fruits and vegetables. You could also have them those that are cut, pre-cut, and packed. And those are jarred if they don't have any added salt or sugar, which is many times the case. So that would be my definition. Then, for instance, if there's like a piece of tomato on a pizza or a sandwich, that's fresh, but that's not, I don't think that should qualify for instance, a VAT reduction in that sense.
Okay, thank you. So they should have had you on board at other time. Yes, thank you very much for your answer. Okay, my next question will be on Chapter 2. Chapter 2 was on food composition databases. And in your discussion, you plead for more updated national food composition databases. These national food composition databases usually contain aggregated numbers. Do you know why this is the case? Why they have aggregated numbers?
Yes, because they usually represent kind of the average produce or any type of food that is out there. I know that usually the use of them is for nutritional sciences or for national surveys.
Yes, go and continue. Why?
To kind of represent the mean consumption of the population or what's available to them there.
Exactly, and whether there are any deficiencies on vitamins and minerals. That's why they have aggregated numbers. Okay, but you would like to have, more better updated data on that. What type of information would you need then?
So I think there's two main things. First, some of the values are from many years ago. When we're talking, for instance, I would talk about the NIVO table. Now there's a new version of the Dutch National Food Composition Database. But many times, at least I checked it some days ago, there's still some measures that were taken in the 80s. So I think that the produce, especially for fruits and vegetables I'm talking here, that we consume nowadays, they are quite different to the practices that were followed back then. And then another thing is that we have an aggregated value. So when we look for the composition of tomato, you only have one tomato, with peel, without peel, cooked or not. But you don't have the different varieties. And that's where we kind of see where the richness of the differences between varieties is there, because maybe one variety was grown to have higher vitamin C, while another one was grown to have more sugar and be more tasty. So I think that's what is missing there. There have been some initiatives on having more data on varieties from the FAO perspective, but that's still at kind of a regional level or some worldwide level that is more for kind of agricultural purposes and not nutrition.
Yeah, so you would like to have a lot of analysis because there are 45 different nutrients, and then I'm not even talking about all these bioactives that could be in there as well. So this is costing a lot of money. Yeah. So if you need to choose, where would you have? Well, you have some money, but not too much. What would you analyze, and in what food?
So I think that's the situation for food composition databases. Maybe update the values, take more values, go to different supermarkets and sample there. So like actual samples. That's usually the way it is done, right? So yes, have more data from biocompounds. But then for the case of nutrition and health claims, and that's also one of the conclusions we have, you can use food composition databases nowadays to support a claim, yes. But what we would advise producers to do is to use food composition bases as a first check to see if it's closer to the cutoff level for applying a claim or for having a claim out there, and then sample their food. So I wouldn't invest that much into sampling everything and having like every variety out there, and actually advise producers to do that. To sample themselves.
Only to support a claim that they would perhaps like to make.
Yeah.
Okay, so then those food composition databases won't be updated. That only will be done.
No, having more like updated data. Yes, it would be nice to have data at the variety level, but I think it would be wisely to give the money more to producers and have them sample their.
Okay, well that's an answer as well.
Yeah.
Okay, well thank you. Then I have a question on chapter 7, your discussion. I liked it a lot. It's good. It talks a lot about the methodology. And I was struck by your last paragraph that was on page 205. You mentioned the alignment with the public health goals, such as reducing ultra-processed food consumption. And this discussion on ultra-processed foods, as you know, is quite polarized, especially internationally. What is your opinion on this?
So to be fully transparent, I published a paper not related to my thesis, but to people I met during my bachelor's in Argentina. We evaluated the consumption of ultra-processed food in Argentina and their association with socioeconomic background. And we do find there a correlation with people being poorer people or at lower socioeconomic levels consuming more ultra-processed foods. That's a thing, but at the same time, if we go back to the consumer discussion, it's putting too much pressure on the consumer, like their choice, right? So I think it's an interesting point to have this discussion about ultra-processed food. I don't think it's a perfect system, the NOVA classification, but it's allowed us to have a meaningful discussion. I think it needs more input. I understand that the WHO is working on that. It's a discussion we need to have, because at the same time, consumption of processed food is high. So it's not that, because we don't have a good definition, then we just should disregard that.
María Belén Beltramo Gómez, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room.
U kunt wel plaatsnemen.
María Belén Beltramo Gómez. The degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Dr. de Boer is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom and invite your supervisor now to take the floor.
Wilt u gaan staan?
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I do, I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law, and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, María Belén Beltramo Gómez, the degree of doctor, and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with a degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university.
U kunt wel plaatsnemen.
Veledel, zeer geleerde vrouwe Beltramo Gómez, esteemed Dr. Beltramo, dear Belén. What an honor it is to be the first to address you today as Dr. María Belén Beltramo Gómez. Congratulations on this extraordinary achievement. And of course, I would like to extend my warmest congratulations to Wouter, your friends, colleagues, and your family. Fue un placer trabajar con su hija, hermana y nieta. Puedo estar muy orgulloso de ella. That's all for Spanish from my side. Today, we heard about the multidisciplinary research you conducted into food labeling policies for fresh produce, presented across 5 chapters in your thesis. Bringing together nutrition science, regulatory analysis, consumer behavior and food policy, you examined how nutrition and health claims, origin declarations and front-of-pack initiatives can help promote fresh fruits and vegetables. Using a wide range of methods, you showed how evidence-based labeling can be applied to unpacked produce. Your work offers novel insights into the variability of nutrient data across Europe, the methodological and regulatory challenges of substantiating claims, and how consumers interpret labels and social marketing initiatives. You demonstrated how scientific evidence, regulation, and consumer preferences can be aligned to support healthier and more sustainable choices. In the last few years, you've been able to successfully complete 3 scientific papers, contributed to at least 5 additional publications and 2 other projects. You presented your work to colleagues from Heise to Tokyo, and you invested in your professional skills and personal development by joining writing courses and, for example, enrolling in the ENLP. And like we saw today, you are a very skilled and impactful presenter with a keen eye for elegant and clear visuals. Whether explaining complex concepts to colleagues, students, or international students, you brought structure and meaning. Your PhD journey started in 2021 with the first online interview from your student room in Wageningen. Your expertise in food labeling was supportive of your application, but during the second interview, it became immediately clear that you enjoyed brainstorming and generating new ideas, as well as asking and answering critical questions. You made our decision an easy one, and I'm delighted that the journey that started there resulted in this impressive and enjoyable defense today. During the start of the project, the promotion team looked slightly different. We had the pleasure to start together with Professor Albast, and I would like to take this opportunity to send my sincere thanks to him for all his support in this project in Venlo and beyond. Alt, I'm very happy that you're able to join us online today for the defense of the final PhD candidate that you started. So let's get back to the actual start of your PhD project, Belén. The project made you land in Venlo after having spent a few years already in Wageningen. You came to live in a new city during a challenging time in which meeting new people and socializing what was not necessarily easy due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. And the ventilation system that blew cold air into your office in the first winter made things almost even more challenging. Thankfully, in the years that followed, you grew your local friends group greatly and even got a roommate, Choco, who even liked to stand on your keyboard every now and then during our online meetings. And the ventilation system was also solved rather swiftly, allowing you to leave your blankets home. For me, this bringing your own blanket was actually a perfect example of your perseverance throughout the entire project. Whenever a challenge appeared, you never gave up. You dug into the details, unraveled the issue, sometimes discovering even bigger hurdles, and still came back with at least one, but mostly more solutions. Often you only mentioned the problem once you had already thought through how to fix it. You sink your teeth into a challenge until you resolve it. Belén, you are a true go-getter, and that made working with you an absolute joy. From the beginning, it was clear that you're someone with great analytical skills. We sometimes had to protect you a little from your own determination because you truly want to understand everything and make sure to be aware of all details. Through our weekly meetings, we had the opportunity to get to know you as a researcher and as a person. You don't wear your heart on your sleeve, but you're thoughtful, creative, empowering, and empathetic. And that calm outward appearance. Even when elements in the project shifted, changed, or deadlines piled up, you remained composed. Even though we got to know behind that calm gaze is a relentless passion. You're a hard-working colleague whom everyone can rely on, and everyone is no exaggeration. You managed your project with ease, aligning many supervisors and stakeholders, while also teaching, supervising interns, and completing your UTQ. You readily supported colleagues with teaching tasks, proposal writing, navigating systems, and methodological questions. You were a committed and valued member of FCRC and our campus in Venlo, contributing both to the serious work and the fun, from chocolate workshops to escape rooms and team dinners. And beyond our team, you engaged in scientific volunteer work in Argentina, even resulting in an additional publication. And throughout your many travels, it was clear how devoted you are to friends and family, even if that occasionally led to losing your keys in the middle of Madrid. But let's not spend too much time on that today. Belén, it's been a real pleasure to supervise you, and I can only look forward to your fantastic next steps. But first and foremost, let's celebrate. Congratulations, Dr. Belén.
Dear Dr. Beltramo Gómez, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I congratulate you with the degree you just obtained. I also like to thank the promoters, of course, for all the help during the years, and also the opposition committee for being present and looking to the thesis, preparing questions for today. Lots of thanks to the audience for being here today, supporting the candidate with their presence. Hereby I close the official part of this meeting. A few housekeeping things. We will take some pictures by the stairs, but feel free already to go to the rafter where we have a reception, and we will join you then in a minute after the pictures are being taken. So thanks again for being present, and let's take some pictures.